Technology is great when it works. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work. We'll make do as we go, right? When I turned 40, I went to the eye doctor. I had not gone to the eye doctor since I was a kid. And the eye doctor told me, he said, your vision's great, but it's probably going to change at some point, and it will be overnight. And he could not have been more correct. I woke up one day, I think I was about 45, and all of a sudden I couldn't read my watch. I couldn't see my phone unless I held it this close. So I went back to the eye doctor, and I got some prescription glasses to help me read. They're probably not a whole lot better than what you buy at Walgreens, right? The problem was that when I'd preach, I could see my iPad just fine, but when I'd look up, I couldn't see the folks. And I didn't want to wear glasses on a chain around my neck. I didn't want to do this all the time, take them off and put them back on. And I didn't feel like I was old enough to do this. And so I told the eye doctor my dilemma, and he said, well, the only other option would be the B word. And you know what the B word is, right? And I didn't feel that I was old enough for bifocals. And I said, has it really come to that? And he said, Chris, you're just going to need to come to grips with the fact that you're getting older. And I pay this guy, right? I don't have to tell you that vision and perspective, how you look at things, how you interpret what you look at, means everything. And unfortunately, not everyone has 20/20 vision when it comes to the church, when it comes to discipleship. In fact, some are visually impaired. There's a guy by the name of Tom Nelson that came up with 4 distortions of the church. See what you think about these. The first one is church is a gas station. This is where people come in every week to get their gas tank filled. They're running on empty by the end of the week. They come on Sunday, they fuel up, and they're ready for the rest of the week. Some see church as a movie theater. This is where you walk in and you sit hopefully in a comfortable seat and you're entertained. Afterwards, you walk out and you feel better. The third is a drugstore. Church provides the prescription for what is ailing you. You're in pain and you get the medicine when you come to church. And the fourth is big box retailer, and you can probably guess what this means. Church exists to meet my needs and my desires. The customer is always right. I'm the customer, and the church exists to fulfill my every want, my every desire, and therefore I'm happy always. And while I think there are some aspects to all of these that are true and worthy, they're still distortions of what the church was originally intended to be. And I think all too often Christians or seekers can be nearsighted, meaning that they can't see into the distance very well. They only see what's right in front of them, and what's right in front of them are their wants, their desires. It's a consumeristic mindset, perhaps. We need a bigger vision. We need to expand our scope, because perhaps the biggest problem in the Christian world right now is that church has become an event. And because church has become event-minded, then everything that happens within church becomes event-oriented. And it makes me wonder, are we mechanically challenged? You know, when something's wrong with my truck, I do what every guy is required to do. I pop the hood and I look around. Do I know what I'm looking for? Not necessarily, but that's what you're supposed to do. You pop the hood, you look around. Daniel Stone, my mechanic, could tell me I need a new Johnson rod, and I'd say, yep, sounds good to me. I don't necessarily know what I'm looking for. I know enough to be dangerous when I look under the hood. I'm mechanically challenged. And I think the same is true for some disciples. Maybe we're mechanically challenged. Do we know what it is that we're looking for? Do we understand what is meant by the term church? Do we know how this whole thing is supposed to run? Now, I do want to pause and say something here. Though some may be visually challenged or mechanically challenged, we shouldn't be too hard on folks. Because in some ways we've done this to ourselves, we have to admit. You know, we bemoan the fact that too many Christians are selfish and they make it all about themselves, but we have long fostered a consumer mentality, right? And it's not all bad. I mean, why do we have programming for certain age groups within the church? Because we want to attract that age group and we want them to feel a part and we want to help them to grow and develop. So it's not all bad, but we can't have it both ways necessarily, right? Like it or not, the church is designed to appeal to someone's tastes. So we're all consumers in some way, shape, or form. Jesus died for all people, including consumers, and consumers have the potential to become contributors. So let's not be fooled into thinking that this is just binary, that there's only two options, that you either cater to the consumers or you ignore the consumers in order to cater to what we'd call the frozen chosen. There's more to it than that. And there is a third option. And that third option is to redeem the consumer, to reconcile them to God, to help them to grow and develop and to be a part of the mission. Instead of griping and complaining about consumerism in the church, let's seek to save the consumers. And here's something else. We cannot mention the distorted vision of the church without recognizing our part in all of this. There is a principle in the marketplace that says all organizations are perfectly designed to get the results that they are currently getting. Brethren must admit that the vision of the church as an event or a place to go is the result of thinking of church as weekly rather than daily. Notice what is written in Acts chapter 2, verses 46 and 47. Day by day, continuing with one mind in the temple and breaking bread from house to house, they were taking their meals together with gladness and sincerity of heart, praising God and having favor with all the people, and the Lord was adding to their number day by day those who were being saved. The key phrase there is day by day. We want to focus on being this church. We say it a lot. We talk about restoring the first century church, being who they were, and doing what they did. But often what we focus on is what happens within these walls. And we've kind of turned the book of Acts into a manual for how to do church. And there's so much more to the book of Acts than that. Because if we want to be who they were and do what they did, then you understand what happens outside these walls is every bit as important as what happens within these walls. They were a movement. We're often a monument. We often stand as a monument to a once great movement. And the reason why we are a monument in many cases is because we've treated it as weekly rather than daily. This church was a daily church. They didn't just come to church and then go home and then go to work and then come back the next week. Church wasn't a part of their life. It was their life. It meant everything to them. It's where they found community. It's where they found belonging. There was a time to gather and there was a time to scatter. But they were still the church even when they scattered. There's a scene in Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, which by the way is the best movie out of that whole series of Star Wars. But anyway, in Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, there's this scene where Han Solo is flying the Rebels in the Millennium Falcon, and they're trying to get away from the enemy, the TIE fighters that are trying to shoot them down. And Han Solo ducks into what he believes is a cave, and he lands the Millennium Falcon, and the rebels get off the Millennium Falcon, and they're standing there, and they think they're on solid ground, but they hear rumbling, and they're shaking, and so he pulls out his gun, and he shoots a laser into what he believes is the ground, only to find out they're not in a cave. They're inside a living, breathing organism. And so they quickly hop on the Millennium Falcon, they push the juice forward, and they get out and they escape narrowly just before the giant sea slug's mouth closes. Han Solo and his friends thought that they were inside of a cave, but they were mistaken. They were inside a living, breathing organism. And we make the same mistake all too often. This is not the church. Walls, brick, mortar. Who fills it is the church. This is not an organization. This is an organism. We are a living, breathing organism. Now, we can have organization, and we should. We could be a bunch of robots, a bunch of parts working in harmony, but there's a big problem with robots. They're not alive. They're not a living, breathing organism. And while an organism needs organization to function, the biggest difference in the two is that an organism lives and breathes and grows and develops and moves, and it all starts with the head. Without the head, the organism has no life. It has no direction. Look with me at Colossians chapter 1, beginning in verse 13. Here's what Paul writes. He says, "For he rescued us from the domain of darkness and transferred us to the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, both in the heavens and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is also head of the body, the church, and he is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that he himself will come to have first place in everything. For it was the Father's good pleasure for all the fullness to dwell in him, and through him to reconcile all things to himself, having made peace through the blood of his cross. Through him, I say, whether things on earth or things in heaven." So Paul is addressing a problem. The problem is false teachers. And they're teaching these false philosophies like asceticism and other false ideas. And Paul is trying to correct that because the church, in its immaturity, he's trying to teach them that, look, you can't fall prey to what all these other people are saying and all these other man-made, self-made religions. And he reminds them of who Jesus is. That's how he combats this. He reminds them of who Jesus is, and in so doing, he reminds the Colossians of who they are. It's really simple. It's a very basic concept or strategy. Of course, Paul knew exactly what he was doing, being guided by the Holy Spirit, but he simply reminds them of who Jesus is. We think that we have it all figured out, and we have better ideas and better politics, and we know the Bible like the back of our hand, and Paul doesn't go to any of that. He starts with Jesus. Look to the cross, look to Jesus, look at who you are because of him. He starts with who Jesus is, which is where we should all start. Everything is predicated upon who Jesus is and what he has done and who we are as a result. Compared to Christ, all of these other false teachers fall short. Compared to Jesus' teachings, all these other false teachings have no merit. Look at the language. Paul says rescued. He uses the word redemption, the phrase forgiveness of sins, firstborn from the dead, fullness of the Father, reconciler. What's Paul doing here? He's spelling out the gospel, is he not? And I love this because it's a reminder that remaining faithful starts with Jesus and the gospel. It's so basic. Every year at spring training, these major league teams, they either go to Arizona or they go to Florida. And you know what they do in spring training? They take ground balls and they throw to first. They get out a tee and they put the ball on it. They go back to t-ball. Why? Because they're relearning the basics. You always go back to the basics, because that's what you're building on. You go back to the elementary truths to avoid the threat posed by false teachers. Paul says, go back to the basics. Go back to Jesus and the gospel, because that's what's defined you. That is the gas in the tank that keeps this thing running. And then notice what he says, verse 21. And although you were formerly alienated and hostile in mind, engaged in evil deeds, yet he has now reconciled you in his fleshly body through death, in order to present you before him holy and blameless and beyond reproach. If indeed you continue in the faith, firmly established and steadfast, and not moved away from the hope of the gospel that you have heard, which was proclaimed in all creation under heaven, and of which I, Paul, was made a minister. So Paul starts with who Jesus is, and then he turns to who the Colossian Christians are and who they were: formerly alienated, hostile in mind, engaged in evil deeds, now reconciled, holy and blameless, beyond reproach. He's appealing to their sense of identity. He's reminding them of who Jesus is and, as a result, who they are. What Jesus has done and who they are because of it. They were a new creation, and now they were empowered to live a new life. And you keep reading in Colossians and you see that Paul encourages the saints to allow their new humanity to be seen in every facet of their lives. Colossians 3, verse 17, whatever you do in word or deed, do all in the name of the Lord. And then Paul spells this whole thing out, and then he throws this into the mix. He is also head of the body, the church. Why is that significant? Because without a head, you have no body. Without a head, the body is lifeless. When I moved to West Texas in 2008, we had a lot of rattlesnakes, and so I got into rattlesnake hunting. And you can cut off the head of a rattlesnake, and the body will move and squirm for at least an hour sometimes. But it's not a threat. It's aimless. It's not going to hurt you because the head has been removed. And the same is true with the church. You remove the head and the body is directionless. It's aimless. It poses no threat to Satan. It's not going to do any harm to him and his work because the church without a head can do nothing. There's a parable about a group of animals that decided that they wanted to start a school because they wanted to be better at things that they were not as good at. So the school was going to major in swimming and climbing and flying and running. And so you have a duck who goes to this school to learn how to climb. He was a good swimmer, but he wanted to learn how to climb. You had a squirrel who was an A-plus climber. He wanted to learn how to fly, and so he took flying lessons. You had a rabbit who was really good at running that wanted to learn how to swim, and so he took swimming lessons. And then you had an eagle who was a great flyer but wanted to learn how to run, and so he took running lessons. And you can imagine what happened. None of them became really good at any of those things, and in the process, they became less proficient in what they were good at. And so the moral of the story is, stick to what you're good at, right? Whatever talent God has given you, use that talent and that ability for Him. Exploit it to the fullest. A pet peeve of mine is something that we say to our kids. And if you've done this, I'm not trying to scold you. It's just something that I've noticed, whether it's in school or with parenting or whatever. You can be whatever you want to be. No, you can't. You cannot be anything you want to be. I can never be an opera singer, no matter how bad I might want to be. If it weren't for size and talent, I'd be in the NBA, folks. You cannot be whatever you want to be. But you know what you can be? Something. You can do something. The Bible indicates that there is no such thing as a zero-talent individual. There is always something that you can do. You can't do everything, you can't do anything, but you can do something. Notice what is written in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. Rather long reading, but let's look at it together. Paul says, "For even as the body is one, and yet has many members, and all the members of the body, though they are many, are one body, so also is Christ. For by one Spirit we were all baptized into one body, whether Jews or Greeks, whether slaves or free, and we were all made to drink of one Spirit. For the body is not one member, but many. If the foot says, because I am not a hand, I am not a part of the body, it is not for this reason any the less a part of the body. And if the ear says, because I am not an eye, I am not a part of the body, it is not for this reason any the less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But now God has placed the members, each one of them, in the body, just as He desired. If they were all one member, where would the body be? But now there are many members, but one body. And the eye cannot say to the hand, I have no need of you, or again the head to the feet, I have no need of you. On the contrary, it is much truer that the members of the body, which seem to be weaker, are necessary, and those members of the body, which we deem less honorable, on these we bestow more abundant honor, and our less presentable members become much more presentable, whereas our more presentable members have no need of it. But God has so composed the body, giving more abundant honor to that member which lacked, so that there be no division in the body, but that the members may have the same care for one another. And if one member suffers, all the members suffer with it. If one member is honored, all the members rejoice with it." In essence, Paul is saying right here that the church is not a lifeless institution. It is a living, breathing, moving life form. And we've got to stop thinking institutionally when it comes to the church. It's killing us, folks. Yes, there is a sense in which the church is institutional in nature. An institution is commonly defined as an organization founded for a religious, educational, social, or similar purpose. And some say, yeah, Chris, I mean, that's us, right? Not exactly. When you think institutionally, it kills the organism. And we've seen this, right? The problem is that our institutional way of thinking has led to elevating law and practice and custom above relationship. It has led to a handful of individuals fulfilling the organization's responsibility. And it's led to the church becoming a monument rather than a movement. This isn't Rotary. This isn't the country club. This isn't PTA or United Way. Those are great organizations, but that's not who the church is. The church is a living, breathing organism that Jesus died for. It is a blood-bought institution. He purchased every one of you, every member, with His own blood. We are Spirit-driven. We are Christ-led. This is a rare life form comprised of a community of disciples through whom Jesus works. And please understand the implication of the church as an organism and not an organization. Body of Christ is more than a figure of speech. It describes a relationship and a role. We all have a role in this body that is directly connected to knowing the head. My relationship with the head assumes that I have a responsibility as a body part. He's the head, we are parts of the body. And so if I'm a part of the body, that means that my body part needs to be doing something, which means that if my body part is not doing something, then my part of the body is dead. Or someone else in the body is having to assume my part, and so they're working extra while my part does nothing. The body becomes deformed, or it doesn't function properly because my part is not working. You see where I'm going with this? Look, this isn't just about being a pew potato. There's more to it than just attendance. There's more to it than just having your name in one church. This is about being a part of something that is living and breathing and moving. And if your part of the body is dead and not fulfilling its role, then that's a problem. If you're not doing something, then someone else is pulling your weight. And that's not to shame you. That's not to make you feel guilty. It's just hopefully to help you realize that there's more to it than just coming here once a week and then going about your business. Paul is saying something else in 1 Corinthians chapter 12. He's saying there are no nobodies in the church. I think I told you this before, but when I was in high school, I've always been a huge Dallas Cowboys fan, and they had a multi-million-dollar player who was really good. When I was in high school is when Cowboys were in their heyday. Actually, the 80s and 90s, early 90s. And they had a multi-million-dollar athlete on the team who missed a game because he had turf toe. And I remember thinking, dude, you're not going to play a game because your toe hurts? Like, we pay you millions of dollars and you're not going to play because your toe hurts? Then I got turf toe. You ever had turf toe? It hurts. It's when that big toe gets bent back too much the wrong way. I never realized how much I did with my big toe. It seemed insignificant until I needed it. You can't hardly run, you can't hardly walk, you certainly can't cut or move. I had a whole new appreciation for this athlete that had missed the game because of turf toe. Maybe you feel that way. Maybe you say, Chris, I hear what you're saying, and I even agree with what you're saying, but what do I have to contribute? This is a large congregation. I mean, I can't really be of any use or effect here. Maybe you feel like that little insignificant nose hair that we talked about a year or so ago. You don't feel like you really contribute anything to the whole. I mean, what are nose hairs for? I'm finding that I'm losing hair where I want hair, and I'm gaining hair where I don't want hair. And one of those places is my nose and my ears. You know, when the wind's blowing and you hear rustling in your ear, you know your ear hair is getting way too long, right? Maybe you pluck your nose hairs. The doctors say don't pluck your nose hairs. You know how significant your nose hair is? I mean, it's the first line of defense for bacteria. If your nose hair is healthy, it means that you're probably going to have less incidences of sinusitis and respiratory infections and things of that nature. You need your nose hair. It's important. And you are important. The church needs you. I need you. The shepherds here need you. You need each other. As the Lord's church, we've often been heavy on doctrine, and that's a good thing. We need to know what the Bible teaches. But you know what doctrine is? Unity. Unity is a doctrine. You ever thought of that? So of all the teachings that we emphasize, you better emphasize unity, because unity is absolutely a doctrine in the Bible. If Jesus prayed for it, you need to push for it. And so what is your contribution to the unity of this church? Are you a part, or are you a part? Maybe you can remember back to those days in high school or junior high when in PE they would play kickball and line up everybody against the wall, and they'd have two team captains, and they would pick. They'd go back and forth and pick who they wanted on their team. You remember that? And maybe you're one of those people that didn't get picked early on. In fact, as they kept picking, you kept standing there, and eventually you're the last one standing against the wall. And one of the team captains looks at the other and says, "You can have him," or "You can have her." And in that moment, you discovered your real value or worth for the team, right? Wasn't much. And I'm afraid that maybe some of you here this morning think that way about Walnut Street. And if you do, look at me. If you do, may I remind you that Christ died for this. He died for your place here. He died so that you could have a spot in this organism, so that you could be a working part, whether that be a nose hair or a big toe or an arm or a leg, whatever. He saw you as worth the sacrifice. He reserved your spot on this team. You were not an afterthought. You were the reason for the cross. You are a vital part of this organism's mission and livelihood. There is an I in team. We like to say there's no I in team. Yes, there is. There is an I in this team. You are valuable. You are important. We need you. I need you. Everyone here needs you. Because the more working parts we have, the stronger we are and the better we are, not just for what happens in here, but for what happens outside of there. What happens in our community. So, please don't take this as scolding. Please take this as an encouragement. Instead of coming here every week and jetting out of here like you're on the Millennium Falcon to go home, stick around. Let us get to know you better, and let us get to find a place for you. Instead of just going about your week and then coming here and then going about your week again and this never affecting you in any way, shape, or form, rethink that. Instead of just using the church for its resources, think about how you treat it. Think about this being a living, breathing organism, and you're a part of it. So look alive, my friends. And if we can help you this morning, if we can pray with you, if we can study the Bible with you, if you're ready to put on Christ in baptism, we'd love to celebrate that with you this morning. Anything that we can do to help you to be an active, moving part of this body, let us know. Come as we stand and as we sing.